to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Well, we're going to kind of dive into just one of the people that Trump's going to appoint to his cabinet. And it's there's a lot of good about it, and you know, we have a lot of the left that's screaming out about it. But I want to get into that. I have a article from Jeffrey Tucker on that, and also a clip from Ron Paul Liberty Report. We're going to cover that first. But then after that, I kind of want to get into the recount thing that Jill Stein started, and what has happened in Michigan after this recount, which is not too far north from me. So we'll go ahead and dive into this Ron Paul Liberty Report, the Mythbusters, Common Sense from a Labor Secretary. And then we're going to dive into this article, too, from Jeffrey Tucker out of Foundation for Economic Education, FEE.org. But let's start out with this Ron Paul Liberty Report.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. This is Friday, and this is the day we do Mythbusters. The co-host is Chris Rosini. And Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Well, very good. I understand we'll be talking about another potential member to the new cabinet come January. Tell us about it.
Yes, in fact, today Donald Trump made an interesting statement that this is the best, probably the best cabinet that the nation has ever seen. And we may have a few disagreements, but today we're going to focus on one that we think has some good potential. It's promising, at least, and that's his choice for Labor Secretary, Andy Puzder. And he's a CEO of a company that owns Hardee's and Carl's Jr., the burger places. And he has a lot of good things that you don't normally hear from a Labor Secretary, so we're going to cover it today. First will be the minimum wage. And I'm going to quote Mr. Puzder, and he says, "If your concern is creating entry-level jobs for young Americans, then a $15 minimum wage is something you should be protesting against." What do you think, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think we have to agree with him on that. Puzder takes a good position on that. He's a good businessman, and he says all kinds of things happen in the thinking of a businessman if wages are pushed higher than the market. But he does not take a position that the government shouldn't be involved in wage setting, and he suggested, you know, a modest increase in the wage might be okay. But you can get attracted to that viewpoint because the average worker wages are being eaten away with inflation. So how do you keep up with it? So it's a little bit more complex, but I just don't like to think that they should be in the business, and that the only problem is 15 is too much and 12 would be okay. So that's the only thing. But he has it right that this is not good if you want to hurt people. The principle here is that you can prevent people from getting hired. This is a hiring obstruction. If an individual comes in and they have very, very low skills and they have some integrity, that they don't want to go on welfare, and there's a low level job somewhere and it pays $10, and the businessman says, well, that's okay, $10, and the guys are willing to take the job at $10, but the government says, no, that's illegal. No, you have to pay him $12 or $13, and he might have been stretching to help this guy out, to give him a job at $10 and try to get him started on a learning path. But no, the government says, under these conditions, thou shalt not hire that individual. The other thing that people don't understand about some of the minimum wages, not all of them, but some are really the first entry jobs. I remember the first job I had was 35 cents an hour working in a drugstore. Well, if the government had said it was 55 cents an hour, I might not have had it, but it gave me an experience, that led to a better job later on because I knew and understood what was going on in the retail drugstore business. But the interference is what is the real problem. And this is why we want the government to stay out of it. We have to recognize that voluntary arrangements are most important in all parts of society. And once you get the government involved in minimum wages and different things, then you run into trouble. You're not measuring productivity. I like to think that a worker, whether he's by himself or in a group or in a voluntary union, his job should be to get the maximum wage. He should push. He should be as convincing as possible that he is productive. He can produce more than the rest of the people, and he should get his wages increased. And if they don't get increased because he's productive, somebody else will come along and grab this guy because he's a productive worker. So, and when they're just starting and they have no skills whatsoever, it's almost like getting paid to go to school. Because if you have no skills whatsoever and you want to become a welder and somebody's willing to take you under their wing and teach you how to be a welder, now, in the first month or two, you might not be even making very much. But for the government regulation to come in, it messes things up. Arrangements economically should all be voluntary. Socially, we try to accept all that. There's still a lot of interference with that, but socially, we think we should pick our friends and our neighbors and people who come into our houses and with whom we associate. And all personal associations should not be regulated by the government for various reasons. And also, we would like to see that the arrangement between governments, international body, and people would be more voluntary rather than intimidating and use of force. But under these circumstances, by minimum wage, it's too much interference. It violates the principles of voluntarism, and violates the principles of free market. It messes up this whole principle of measuring the productivity and the worth of an individual. And to me, it's just un-American to do that because, in the early days, they didn't have that. And that was when we were looking for labor. Once government gets involved in this type of activity, it messes the economy and people become resentful. It becomes illegal to put a bid out for your wages at a lower level. And it's so different than what a free market would produce because a free market is prosperous and productive and you're looking for, the best workers and they should argue for the highest wages, just like the businessman should argue for the best profits. But what they forget about when they're trying to regulate wages to help the wage earner is that the free market, freedom is designed to serve the interest of the consumer in economics. And the consumer has to get the best price. And everybody's a consumer. So therefore, wages have to be held in check. We used to make fun when the minimum wage was $4 or $5. Well, why don't you guys make it to 15? And that was such an outrageous statement. Everybody would laugh. Well, of course, that's too high. And now here we are at 15. But the question is, why don't I make it 25? And everybody would be happy. Well, it leads to bad things, and we'll talk about some of the things that this leads to when the government forces wages higher than they should be.
Yes. Next, from Andy Puzder, some hard to swallow truth, but he tells it as it is, and it's on automation. He says the machines are always polite, they always upsell, they never take a vacation or show up late, they never slip and fall, and you'll never get an age, sex, or race discrimination case. Now, Dr. Paul, what can the government do to help people to be more competitive so that they're not replaced with automation?
Well, that means just leave them alone and leave the market work and let the incentives be out there. But people get hysterical. They have for centuries been upset about automation. Automation today, the incentive is how the government messes up the expenses running a business, with the regulations, taxation, and artificially high wages. Let's go to automation. That's a natural, normal survival move that they make. But they should realize that automation's been around for a long time. It reminds us of the Luddites in the early part of the 19th century. Oh, they thought it was terrible that automation coming in the textile industry, and we need all the weaving to be done by hand, and you're going to ruin all these jobs. And they became violent and started wrecking this machinery, in order to preserve jobs. Well, that didn't make a lot of sense. What they didn't say, to stop and think about, is, well, maybe automation creates jobs too. Who's going to produce the machines? And one example that I like to use is the tractor. What if it takes you 500 people to run a farm by hand, hoeing the garden and fertilizing and digging the garden and plowing with a horse and all this? Just think of what it was like in the early days when tractors were just coming in, and the frugal farmer was able to produce enough and save a little bit of here and there and get enough capital and buy a tractor. And he had to make those 500 people running the farm replaced with one or two tractors. It was amazing. But if it happened to be a small farm and was a family, and it took 15 members of the family to do all the work, if they got one tractor, guess what? That family could do other things. They could have more leisure. They could go to school and the different things that would happen. But the principle of the tractor is that it causes unemployment and menial work. But somebody has to make the tractors. The same thing with automobiles. There were people saying, "Oh, we can't have all these automobiles coming in. The blacksmith, what is he going to do? How is he going to work on the horses and the carts and things?" Well, what happened? The demand for automobiles became much greater, and there were more jobs than ever before, and there was more productivity. But people have to adapt. People can't just think that they're hoeing a garden. They can't learn how to drive the tractor. They have to move along, and that's one of the things that's happening today. Is there are jobs out there. Some businesses honestly are looking for people from outside our country because there's not enough people willing to work, capable of working, or come out of college with a good education, and they can do the work, especially in some of the technology. So those are separate problems. But if you didn't have these forces created by government basically, and push prices higher than they should be, and have the inflation, you have to compensate for this. This makes it much more difficult. But the whole idea of automation is a good idea, but it's very, very annoying when it comes under today's circumstances, because this was all obviously what Putzker was saying. He said, what we're going to do is, in the restaurant business, we're going to automate it and put these people out of jobs because they push for it. So it backfires on people when they think they can artificially decide what the wage would be. I mean, it eventually might have come that automation may be serving us everything, but the market should decide that. The consumer, maybe the consumer wants a more personal approach. Who knows what? But when the problems are artificially created by government, and then automation becomes a major problem. But I think the new Secretary of Labor has the right ideas about this and would know at least how to advise the way the president should go.
Yes, great points, Dr. Paul. Next, we're going to cover a topic that Puzder actually disagrees with Donald Trump, and that's immigration. And Puzder says that deporting 11 million people is unworkable, and we hope in the end Mr. Trump comes to the same conclusion. Deportation should be pursued only when an illegal immigrant has committed a felony or become a public charge. Who do you think has the better idea about that?
Puzder obviously does. And, the one thing is one of the shortcomings of Trump may be a positive. Trump is not obsessive on all the issues. And already, the wall, I think he's backed down a little bit on that. And so he'll probably back down on this because, just in a practical sense, it's impossible to do it. So why pretend? People in politics tend to say things just to galvanize and energize and emotionalize these issues, and people get excited. Yeah, let's do it. Ship them back. Put Hillary in prison. And, then suddenly the tone changes. So when he makes a good appointment like this, we should be very hopeful that the advice is going to be very good, reasonably good, and understands business, and that Trump picked him. He must have respect for him. He must think he's not going to be an enemy of the Trump administration. So I think we should be optimistic about that. And then if the other economic changes pan out, which I'm reluctant to believe that's going to be an automatic, that is, we have a healthy, thriving economy by just spending more money. I just don't believe that. The people should have more money by saving and having more of a market economy. But if the economy remains weak, then we'll still have this job problem. But if some of this stuff would work, if we did go to a free market, if we did restrain or get rid of the Fed and get them out of the business of rigging interest rates and rigging the system for the benefit of the very wealthy, they would be thriving. During the time of the Industrial Revolution, when we had the steel mills and the automobile mills and the steam engines and all these things, we needed labor, and they were pouring in here, and nobody worried about it. And there were high-paying jobs. And I had a grandparent that came under those circumstances in the latter part of the 19th century, and working in a steel mill. So they needed labor. So it takes care of itself. And a lot of people say, well, you can't blame government for everything. Yeah, but almost, especially under today's circumstances, because the only way you couldn't blame government is if government were restrained and it had a definition that the founders tried to give it, and that is the purpose of government is to protect liberty and property and contracts and voluntarism. That's what they're supposed to be doing. Under those cases, you don't blame the government. We blame the government now because they do too much of the wrong thing and not enough of the right thing.
Right. And finally, Dr. Paul, we're going to end with overtime rules. And the left they're pretty sad. I'm going to quote the LA Times. They say Puzder could lead an effort to scrap Obama administration initiatives, particularly the overtime rules, which seek to broaden the number of Americans who are compensated for extra work. Now, should government be involved in this at all?
No, they shouldn't be. That's part of the, the private arrangement and personal choices. And the liberals have been writing about that. And they said, oh, it looks like Puzder will be supporting labor over business. And some may interpret it that way. But the true position is you don't pick labor, you don't pick business, you pick the consumer, which means that you don't interfere. But the whole fact is that the consumer is the one that we have to deal with, and we're not supposed to pick out and be against the consumer or pro business. But wage control, this is what they want to do, and they have various ways of doing this, sick leave and different things, but they're artificially messing around with wages. But where the really big problem in this country is for the working man is that the consequence of an over powerful union movement and this philosophy where labor prices are built too high, especially in governmental labor unions and things where wages have been very high, individuals have been able to retire at early ages, and the benefits are tremendous. And guess what? Even the city of Dallas right now have essentially declared bankruptcy, that they can't handle the pension funds. So that's what is a consequence of when the government interferes and you say, you take care of him, you take care of him. And the principle is they can't use force. You know, if the businessman couldn't fire, the businessman becomes the slave. If the working man can't leave, he becomes the slave. And right now, I would say that the businessman is the one that gets hurt the most under these circumstances. But the businessman should be able to negotiate, fairly. A lot of people say, well, what's the position of the libertarians on labor unions? So does that mean you don't like them? And should you pass more strict right-to-work laws? No, you have to just legalize a voluntary contract. So under a libertarian society, working people could come together, they could meet, and they could plan, and they could try to negotiate with the company on benefits and wages, safety, and all these things. But they can't get the benefit of a government law that says that you can't go to the National Labor Relations Board and have a ruling that said you will accept the union demands. That's where it's wrong. So you shouldn't be able to do that. But the businessman and the unions, I think there'd be unions in a libertarian society, but I think they would be very competitive, but I don't think they should be able to force, just like the businessman right now has a lot of benefits and welfare in a way of getting help, but the businessman shouldn't get the benefits, nor should the working man get it in the way that they can force their way on the government, have the government stand behind it. It should be a voluntary approach of bringing labor together. And guess what? They should be working together. They shouldn't be antagonists. In a free society, they wouldn't be antagonists. But it is confrontational now. And I think that right now, the consequence of the ill-advised compulsiveness and compulsoriness of labor unions has come out. Right now, they represent 7% of the working people. But you could still have labor unions. You just have to recognize that everything should be voluntary. Nobody should get special benefits, a grant of forcing one side on the other. I think under those conditions, the businessman would be happy. The working man would be happy. Just remember, the highest wage in industry came voluntarily before unions. When automobiles came in and the Ford worker made $5 a day. And that was huge. Later on, the unions came in and made a big difference. So I think the labor would benefit, business would benefit, get the government out, get rid of the regulation, get rid of the inflation, and guess what? Who would be the biggest beneficiary? It would be the consumers, and we're all a consumer, and we all want liberty. So I would suggest that's the way we ought to go.
I agree.
Chris, that ought to do it for the day, I think, unless you have anything else.
No, that's it for today. Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Okay, Chris, and thank you for being with us. And I want to thank the audience for joining us today. And please come back to the Liberty Report soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, we have a lot of the left coming out, and they really not too happy with, the pick for labor secretary. They really were hoping, we'll get minimum wage boost. Not realizing that puts a number of them out of jobs, raises prices on the goods. So now you're out of a job, and then the price of goods go up. Um, it's one of those snowball effects that I've told people before. We have to get to a point where if you want wages to be higher, we have to be buying the goods that we make, and then if we aren't making the goods that we're buying, then we need to start. Um, and we're slowly going that way. And what a lot of people don't realize too is, especially the left, is that they've already started going that way. You don't tend to see them go by, the patriotic, made in America stuff. But what they have done is a lot of people on the left have gone organic and, non-GMO and local and growing their own stuff. And in a way, that's made in America. That's American. Too bad they still want to pick the people that would rather see them on the government ticket so they can, guarantee voters. Now, I have an article again here from FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Education. This is by Jeffrey Tucker. A preposterous attack on Andrew Posner. I have no idea whether the restaurateur Andrew Posner will be a good labor secretary. I will say that it is a huge but much welcome departure from tradition that the labor secretary possesses actual knowledge and experience in hiring workers and dealing with the biggest obstacle to job growth today, which is the agency he has been tapped to head. But if Posner is not successful, it will not be because of the reasons the New York Times cites in a stunningly bad editorial. The article contains so much misinformation that I would like to do what I've never done before: deploy the sorry guys, literary device called fisking, which is going through the article line by line and exposing it for what it is. For all the predictable reasons, the Times thinks that a vastly regulatory apparatus in Washington imposed on every business and worker in the country is just an awesome way to help the American worker. The truth is very much otherwise. These very regulations are the cause of mass suffering, sizable unemployment, terrible job loss, and slow job and business growth. When I think about human rights and how their violations imposes such a high social cost, labor regulations come first to mind. So let's investigate what the Times has to say. Working in fast food is no picnic. Hold on right there. You know what's worse than working in fast food? Not working at all, which is precisely what the minimum wage does. It locks people out of the labor market. It was invented and enforced to do precisely that. Maybe it has just been way too long since the writers of the New York Times struggled for work. But here's the truth: getting an early job in fast food is a liberation. It's exciting, action packed, educational, and you actually make money. I loved every fast food job I ever had. It was more than a picnic, it was the greatest thing to happen to me up to that point in my life. Tens of millions say the same. And it is for people that are looking for a job and finally get hired in their, fast food. They go in and they want to do a good job. You do have people go, oh, I got the job, yay! But that's you get people both ways, and even, in the job I'm in, you get grown individuals that come in and they, oh, I hate my job, I don't want to be here. Well, then, you are here. Everything you do basically has your name on it. And if you don't care and you don't try, everything with your name on it is junk. No one wants anything with your name on it. What does that say about, take pride in your work and work your way out of it. Be an entrepreneur. Go out and attempt something. But it says here, quote, the industry is famous for um, grindingly low pay and labor law violations. Yet Andrew Puzder, the chief executive of the company that operates Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, has been chosen by President-elect Donald Trump as labor secretary. Here is the record at those restaurants when the Obama Labor Department looked at thousands of complaints involving fast food workers. It found labor law violations in 60% of the investigations at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, usually for failure to pay the minimum wage or time and a half for overtime. Here is grindingly low pay for you, $0. If you know anything about the egregious enforcement of this apparatus of law, you know that no growing dynamic company can avoid pushing the limits of these regulations. If these labor law violations mean giving people work without having flawlessly complied with a million unknowable regulations pushed out over the last 100 years from D.C., good for Hardee's and Carl's Jr. jobs. In fact, I suspect that the benefit of compliance is a myth in general. If anything, companies are far too compliant with regulations that actually harm workers. The time and a half rule is an example. As a worker, I want to be able to work and make money as much as someone is willing to pay me, and do so without mandates from Washington. I don't want the boss to tell me go home now because some bureaucrat is standing over his shoulder. Now, I'm someone that has been like that. I've even in high school, I got in trouble for working over the hours I was supposed to work, being in high school. Said, I don't care. Why Washington cares? I was like, yeah, screw Washington. Even back then, I was, screw Washington. I want to work. I need money. I buy my own things. I like buying my own things. I don't never, have like relying on someone else to buy me something. I was right there, Generation X, millennial period. Um, wore the Jinkos back in high school, in middle school. So, Jinkos, the baggy pants. I never wore the big old, sweeping pants. I just like the baggy, straight cut type Jinkos. Um, I might have had one pair that was kind of a little oversized, but for the most part, straight cut. But my mom wouldn't buy that for me. If she's gonna buy me blue jeans, she'd probably, go get a pair of Levi's. Um, I had to buy my own. Now I did have one Christmas that she bought me, a pretty nice pair. But then right there towards the end, once I started kind of not buying Jinkos as much, um, Jinkos started kind of going more department store, everywhere, Kohl's. And then she goes, hey, I found some Jinkos I'm willing to buy you, and they're kind of not the baggy, which at that point was fine with me. But, you know, working to buy your own things, it was great. And I was willing to always work more than what I was allowed to work. And, he points that out here. It's something that should be between me and the worker. Oh, your parents. My parents wouldn't have been mad knowing I was working. So I I don't want to see people abused, but that's also something that we have to understand that what we see as abuse is opportunity for many. There are people that can come and work for lower pay than maybe you're willing to work for because, well, that's a lot of money compared to what that same company in their own country is willing to pay. Now, again, I think it comes down to, we have to focus a lot here in America too. We have to care about what we're doing to influence everything around us. You don't like that jobs are leaving America? Don't buy stuff from China. You're mad that there's a Walmart on every corner? Don't shop at Walmart. And there are other options. And if there's not enough options for you, take a giant leap. See if there's an opportunity to start your own retail store. If that's something have done, why not? And one thing I try to tell younger people is stay out of debt. I think really, really smart people that are that entrepreneur type people, if you are smart enough to teach yourself something and you can stay out of debt and not go to college and work and make good money and work your way up in a company and save money and not go into debt, maybe get a good credit rating going, save up some money, do a business plan, and try to get investors or a loan with that money you save back as a down payment. I think that would be a better option than for, really smart person to go to college, maybe probably learn more if they, educated themselves. Because what I've found is many of the highly intelligent people I've met, they weren't educated by a school. They were educated because they're somewhat like me, a sponge. I like taking in as much information as possible. Let's get back to this article. It says here the Times gives the impression once again that people who are working are being exploited. It is the regulatory apparatus that is the exploitative agency because it works to keep people out of work and make it impossible for companies to grow. Quote, the central problem for workers today is persistently low pay, even at profitable companies with highly paid executives. High pay is better than low pay. Absolutely. Redistributing the salaries of executive to workers would raise wages for about 10 minutes. Then what? Quote, Mr. Puzder, however, has been adamantly opposed to a meaningful increase in the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. Mr. Trump has said he could stomach an increase to 10, which is still abysmal. Ideally, a labor secretary who is supposed to have a deeper understanding of this issue would push for much more. But Mr. Puzder has said that a big raise would mean fewer jobs for workers starting out. Even if that was true, and the evidence suggests otherwise, there are millions more who would benefit from raising the minimum wage. Unquote. Trump should be criticized for calling for such an increase. Indeed, I've done that. No one would accuse me of being a Trump apologist. The minimum wage should be lowered, in fact, as the Times editorial page pointed out in January 14th, 1987, the right minimum wage is $0. Let's quote the Times from a smarter era. But there's a virtual consensus among economists that the minimum wage is an idea whose time has passed. Raising the minimum wage by a substantial amount would price workers, poor people, out of the job market. In the 29 years since the editorial, there seems to have been a brain drain on the editorial team. Progressives need to deal with this. The minimum wage began as a eugenic device designed to exterminate and disenfranchise population groups. The idea was to raise the wage floor very high so that undesirables would stay in the basement and die. And you know what? It has mostly accomplished its intended goal. While we are at it, let's confront the deeply misogynistic origins of labor regulations too. They were instituted to drive women out of the workforce and back into domestic work. For a full year, the Times has warned about the rise of white supremacist movements and the rise of misogyny. I worry about these too. Now we have a pick for labor secretary who wants to do something about laws rooted in white supremacy and misogyny, and the Times flips out. As for the claim that millions will benefit, maybe so, but they benefit at the expense of people who cannot get work. Those people are now priced out of the market, a result which labor unions love. It's taking from some to give to others, the very business of government. Quote, Mr. Puzder has also been a scathing critic of efforts by the Obama administration to update the rules for overtime pay eligibility, which has not been fully adjusted for inflation since the mid 1970s. His argument boils down to an assertion that employees prefer a low salary and the prestige of a managerial title, even though they would be entitled to overtime if they remained hourly employees. His opposition to the new overtime rules is especially troubling given that it would be his task as labor secretary to defend the rules, which have been challenged in court. To be a scathing critic of the attempt to raise the eligibility for overtime is to be a rational human being. Companies all over the country have been scrambling to comply, breaking the hearts and shattering the dreams of employees for months in order to comply, until a federal judge mercifully shot down the regs. And did you catch that the Times thinks that his task as a labor secretary is to defend the rules? Who says maybe the task of the labor secretary is to promote job growth based on some semblance of clear thought? If the job of a cabinet pick is merely to grow the state, we are doomed. Quote, Mr. Posner has also blamed the Affordable Care Act for causing a restaurant recession. There is no evidence that health care reform has harmed job growth, and there is certainly no evidence of a restaurant recession. That there was a restaurant recession after Obamacare makes perfect sense to me. I know of no business owner or manager who hasn't gone a bit more gray following the ACA. It's been grueling, but decide for yourself what you think of Posner's article. You can read it here. His evidence fits with everything I know, and I'm hardly alone. ACA might have been the major reason Trump was elected. And yet, even then, even after the Times candidate lost and major insurers are going belly up and premiums are soaring, these editorialists are still unable to confront reality, as Trump would say, sad. Mandatory sick leave has been criticized by Mr. Posner as well. He says it would be an undue burden on businesses. Yet, in all other advanced economies, paid sick days, paid parental leave, and similar policies are rightly seen as investments in human capital, as necessary as investments in plants and equipment. If all these mandates are investments in human capital, why do they need to be mandated? Businesses are surely smart enough to know something about investment, surely more than government knows. If these were great programs, they would happen organically, not as top-down mandates as it is. These impositions only lead to job loss. They might have been instituted to help the worker, but the reality is that they have made workers cling to jobs too long and decline the risk of shooting their skills for the fear of losing benefits. My dream is that every law that the Times loves in its editorial goes away, liberating the American worker to make his or her own deals. You will see employment boom as never before, and business too. It would be glorious, but even that doesn't go far enough. How about lowering the legal age to work too? And clutch those pearls hard, Times writers. Some modicum of worker freedom might stand a chance. And I'm one of those people that I'm for lowering the legal age to work too. When I was 14, I was looking for a job, and I found 2 places in the whole city, 2 places that hired at 14. Of course, they were full. Each one hired, I think, 1 or 2 14-year-olds, and the rest, were older people. But I couldn't get a job. I wanted to work, couldn't get a job. And people were like, you should just push the lawnmower. You don't think I tried? That's how bad I wanted to work. Now, not saying I didn't help people out here and there make, $40, $50 here and there, but I wanted to work. Give me $150, $250, $300. I wanted to work. And it it was one of those things that even when I turned 15, um, still very few people wanted to hire. Eventually, I found one right as I was getting ready to turn 16, um, which I quickly quit because at the time they paid minimum wage, which was a lot lower than what minimum wage is now. Um, and I knew I had more ambition and more skill set than what they were going to offer me. So, as a teenage worker, high school worker, I went and applied somewhere else that paid, I think it was like $2 an hour above minimum wage. And being in high school, they could have easily gone, well, you'll probably like this job better. Um, we could probably pay him, 50 cents above minimum wage. Or, they knew I got paid minimum wage where I worked before, which I only worked there for about 2 months. Um, they could have offered me a lower wage, but they knew that, hey, if he has a skill, he deserves his pay. We'll see if he works out. Of course, I worked out. Um, and after high school, I've either worked for myself or any job that I've worked for, you know, someone else where, you have manager over manager and then, that whole top down. Um, within usually a year, I've only had one job that took me more than a year to be promoted. But we don't even see that drive because those job opportunities aren't there anymore. We when he talks about these companies that want to expand, and that they're fighting all these regulations, and now even for the companies, the premiums for all these benefits that they have to offer to people that before would have been considered part time. So then they even a lot of times cut hours back on employees because they're like, yeah, well, we have to offer you benefits, but only for we're not even going to allow you to reach the 40 hours. 30 hours and above, we have to give you benefits, 30, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, we'll keep you in there because then that saves us those hours, and I've seen it happen. Now, we have, you know, I believe we have a problem with our youth. They are, I believe, treated as children way too long. I call it the bottle feeding generation where, they're grown kids still drinking a bottle. Um, and now that because those jobs aren't there, they're not even really expected to go get a job. And I remember growing up and a lot of friends, not all of them, but a lot of them, their parents wanted them to, either get a job or, do something other than just go to school and come home. Have some type of ambition, sports team or, some other, club after school or, get into a trade or, a job, do something. Now, I'm seeing a lot where, the parents don't expect that anymore because, there's not a lot of jobs out there. And when you pull up in a lot of these fast food and you see maybe one young person and the rest are adults, some that look like they might have probably retired at one point. Not trying to go, they're old, but they're older people. It looks like they should have retired or might have retired and had to go back to work because the cost of living has gone up. And it's kind of, it's weird for me. And it's also like deja vu because I've gone through this before where I stop recognizing the world I live in because it seems to be, morphing into something that just, there's something not right with it. And when I walk into some of these places and I'm like, I remember walking into, these stores in high school and like 3 or 4 of the people working were my age. And now I walk in and one of them is that, high school age. The rest are grown people. And then we wonder why, they're shouting for, higher minimum wage. Well, because they're grown people trying to live on a job that used to be filled by high school students. Yeah, you would have a few. Again, you would get some of the older people that might be, they need to go back to work or they want to go back to work. They're not feeling the retired. They sit at home bored watching TV. I'd rather kind of go work, make some more money. We have to get to a point where we're not looking at, oh, that person gets paid minimum wage, and that minimum wage is way too low to live on with 3 kids and, trying to put them through college, making minimum wage. I don't think the cashier at McDonald's was ever a position to put someone through college. Maybe as a third job or a second job where someone's just, I got to make a lot of money real quick. I got a regular job that pays decent money. But I want to make, a lot of money real quick to kind of get the savings up a little bit higher. So maybe I'll take on 2 jobs or 3 jobs for a year, or however long I feel I can handle it. And then, go back to just my normal job. But never as your sole job as a cashier at McDonald's or a store at the mall was ever meant to be something to put people through college. Now, there's an exception for that. You'll have the older people, the adults that are in a way in charge over, you'll have one older person in charge over maybe 3 or 4 younger people, and then when those younger people are at school, you're basically filling that in, and then you might have a couple other people where now you alternate shifts a certain way. But for the most part, and it's something that I remember growing up, and it's almost like I didn't see it happen until it was already happened. And I think it was maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that I just looked and I'm like, what is going on here? And I actually went into, I can't remember, it was a fast food, could have been a Wendy's or something, but I went in and there was someone there working that I knew. And I'm thinking, this person wasn't, the brightest person, but they also weren't dumb. There's a lot dumber people that I know that came from decent families that went through college. Even though they made it through college, I still don't know if I would, want to be the receiving end in their field. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. And that person recognized me. Yeah, how you doing? It got to a point where they basically told me, yeah, it's kind of, just a job I got for now until, I can get something in that position that I used to have. I forget, this was about a year or 2 ago. And basically got to a point they got laid off. Still couldn't find something in what they were already doing. And they're working at fast food. Now, I've also had a relative that was the head of a whole department in some type of financial place. Now working part-time at Walmart. And probably could go full-time, but it was that thing where, like, I'm already older, and I'm not going to work full-time doing this. The market, the economy, the jobs out there are not growing. There are things that this labor secretary is proposing, and if Trump can get rid of a lot of regulations, which I've heard a lot of freaking out about the EPA. I haven't really looked into it, but the EPA pick is a climate, change denier or whatever. But again, I haven't really looked into that whole issue yet. But if we can get rid of some of these regulations, I think we could grow an economy. I think businesses, if they could have the manpower, would be willing to expand. But we've got in such a predicament that if I hire that many people, you got to understand the benefits I got to put out. These people would work for not, a lot lower wages than I could provide even benefits for them. But at the wages I would have to hire them at to do kind of meaningful or, meaningless jobs, really, box stuff up, if I could hire someone at, $6, $5 an hour to do that full time, just put things in a box and tape the boxes, then I would, even be willing to give them, health insurance. Because after I have, this many employees, I get such a good deal on the health insurance, I can give it to them. But they're not doing a job that's takes a lot of skill. And then a lot of times, hey, there's programs that are always looking to give these people that have mental disabilities that can still work in, certain type of things. There are companies out there that are trying to give those people, which it's like 3 hours, 2 hours a day, because they can't really afford to pay them a lot to put things in a box and tape it up. We don't realize the potential that companies could grow even if they didn't get rid of all regulations or all the regulations against workers. If we could scale it back a little bit, I think we could see economic growth. We could pull that back even a little bit further. I think we could possibly have a boom, but that also plays into a lot of other figures with regulations and monetary policy, and we have, like Ron Paul and them said, not all the cabinet picks that Trump has picked do we like, but the labor secretary at least has given me a little bit of hope, and has given other libertarians a little bit of hope. And we'll see what happens. I think there's definitely a possibility for a decent amount of growth if a lot of this comes to fruition, Okay, give me a second here. Now, I have an article here from We Are Change, but then I also want to get into this clip from We Are Change, just to kind of cover the whole election and Trump being elected, blah, blah, blah. We Are Change, the right keeps winning. Voter ID bill approved in Michigan after recount effort. Jill Stein was already drawing ear from her own party, and it is likely about to get worse as Michigan approved a voter ID proposal in the wake of her recount stunt. On Wednesday evening, the Republican-led State House of Representatives passed through legislation which would require voters to bring an ID to their local clerk's office within 10 days of an election. Otherwise, their votes will not be counted. Under current laws, Michigan residents can vote without identification if they sign an affidavit stating their identity. On November 8th, over 18,000 people in Michigan cast their ballots this way. The Detroit News' Jonathan Osling reports that almost half of all such votes took place in heavily Democratic Wayne County and almost 6,000 in the city of Detroit alone. Hot Air noted. That seems oddly disproportional given that Wayne County accounts for just 16% of the state's total. The bill faced heavy opposition from Democrats who argued that the bill would disenfranchise voters. If important to note that a valid photo identification card is required to even purchase certain cough medicines. You can read the rest of that article at wearechange.org titled "The Right Keeps Winning, Voter ID Bill Approved in Michigan After Recount Efforts." I just kind of want to cover that a little bit. But I do want to get to this article here from We Are Change. what will the global financial economy look like under President Trump? And, just looking at the treasurer or the labor secretary, you know, you have hope. But I'm also looking at, the call for tariffs and stuff like that. Um, that hurts poor people because, well, that's all the Chinese goods. Now, in the long run, it can help the poor people, but will the poor people understand what's going on? Will they be willing to be, poor people already hurting? Will the rich be willing to take a hit to keep the poor people happy long enough to get those jobs in place? I don't know. And that's the thing, that in this circumstance, that's what we would have to do. Um, I've warned against tariffs because I've at one time had this same belief that Trump had. And that's that, well, we'll just put tariffs on imported goods when companies move their factories outside of the United States. That way, when they ship them back in, well, it'll be just a tiny bit more than what it would have cost for that same product if they would have just kept the factory here. So in the long run, well, they're not going to sell as much. But you got to realize too, if they don't sell quite as much, the wages that they're paying are so little that their profit is still way the hell up there. They're still getting rich at the same time more poor people can't afford things. So, I'm not too happy about a whole tariff thing. I think it has to be a mindset where people go, I want something made in America because I want there to be jobs in America. Really, it comes down to something as simple as that. But let's get in this clip, We Are Change.
This is Luke Radowski of We Are Change.org here in Acapulco, Mexico. I am joined, of course, by the one and only dollar vigilante, Jeff Berwick. Now, Jeff has a very interesting story. He lost hundreds of millions of dollars during the internet boom and then said, wait, I should actually study this and figure out what happened and look at all the financial currents and what's happening around the world economically to make sure that this never happens to me again. And he actually predicted Bitcoin, told you to buy it when it was at $3. A month ago, before Trump got elected, he said he would get elected. I didn't even say that myself. Now, obviously, when talking about Trump, there's going to be huge global ramifications and changes with him becoming president-elect. Already, we are seeing Canada and Mexico saying that they will renegotiate NAFTA. We are seeing the downfall of the TPP. But I wanted to talk about just where is Trump going to go with the global economy? What effect will he have on it? Jeff?
Well, first of all, it's not an election. They decide these things well ahead of time. I realized about a month before the election that it looked like they were going to definitely put Trump in. You could see all the signs of it. It was quite clear that they had both sides, as they always do, and they decided to go with Trump. There was just too much upswell, which is great, thanks to people like yourself and so many people putting truth out there that people were waking up. So that's what happened with Brexit as well. Is they normally rig these elections highly, and they always do. But with Brexit, there was just too much people who knew what was going on. So they're like, okay, let's let them win, like they did with Brexit, make them all feel like they have some sort of say, and then not do anything whatsoever, which is what we've seen with Brexit. We saw that with Nigel Farage, who quit right after, said there was too many assassination attempts, too many threats on his life. He's just going to quit. The new prime murderer of Britain is basically anti-Brexit. They're talking about maybe in 2019 they might do it. So this is sort of what they're doing now. So now the same thing happened with Trump. They said, okay, there's too many people who are figuring this out. Too many people know about Hillary Clinton. So let's let them think they won. So they elect Trump. I don't think there's going to be a massive amount of change. You can already see what he's doing. He says he wants to drain the swamp. He's refilling the swamp.
definitely have seen that with him appointing a former George Soros employee and Goldman Sachs man to Secretary of Treasury. There's other people connected with Henry Kissinger, all the top elite banks being a part of his transition team. So we're seeing just a capitulation. Will this actually result in actual policies? We will see when he is president, because he is still not in the Oval Office. But where do you see, with him being surrounded in the swamp and filling it up, how do you see it step by step progressing?
Well, yeah, I call it the Oval Orifice because that's really what it is. But yeah, that's exactly what's going on. He's actually Jesuit trained. The Jesuits are behind many of these sort of horrible elite New World Order globalist sort of things. You look at who Trump is already, he hasn't even started yet. He's already got his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, who's Goldman Sachs. Transition advisor is Anthony Scaramucci of Goldman Sachs. He's got his Commerce Secretary nominee is Wilbur Ross of Rothschild and Company. Possible budget director is Gary Cohn of Goldman Sachs. This is just, complete exactly what I said. They make everyone think, okay, we won. Look, we went to a little closet with a curtain. We ticked the box and we won, and then nothing's really going to change. There's going to be some things that change, but a lot of things that are going to change are actually quite negative. And one of the things that a lot of people think is really positive is how he's going to change the economy and all these free trade agreements and all that sort of stuff. Some of it is quite good. Free trade agreements should always just be one sentence long. It should say these two countries agree to free trade. The current trade agreements they have are literally phone books. You're not even allowed to look at them, or you can't even bring your cell phone to even look at these things. So the fact that he wants to change those is good. But his protectionist policies, which a lot of people are really positive about, this is going to save America, will not. Protectionism does not save countries. So putting up walls and putting in tariffs and taxes on things coming into the country will not make your average American's life better. In the short term, for a few months, for example, they might still have jobs, but then watch what happens to prices. As he increases anything coming in 35%, that's going to increase the price of everything 35%. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. You have all these people say they can't even live on the minimum wage, which obviously they can't. Inflation's so much from the Federal Reserve, which Donald Trump never talks about shutting down ever. In fact, he's actually quite a proponent of it. So all the major things, all the things that need to be washed away are the Federal Reserve. That's one of the biggest issues in the U.S. and the world today. The IRS needs to be washed away. He's not talking about getting rid of it. He says maybe we'll lower some taxes. He's already backed off on a lot of that. The drug war, he wants to actually increase that. He wants to have stop and frisk like in New York everywhere. It's going to be a complete police state. He's already talked about maybe shutting down the internet. He wants Edward Snowden dead, I believe. So this guy is absolutely, he's just another face. It's just two puppets. It's the same boss, the same as the old boss.
It's definitely a conundrum covering him because he says things that are so popular and people resonate with it so much. But then you actually look at some of the other things he says and it scares the crap out of you, like spying on everyone domestically. But just getting back on track here, I mean, he is inheriting a huge bubble within the United States. I mean, we just reached, what, 19 trillion in debt with the U.S. petrodollar previously being attacked by Russia and China. How do you see the future of the dollar since it is at a very strong point right now?
Well, first of all, these protectionist policies that he talks about wanting to institute will be very negative for the dollar. George Bush put in some protectionist policies as well right after 2000, which caused the bear market in the dollar all the way up to 2008. So that is going to be very negative for the dollar, which is going to be very positive for gold and silver and Bitcoin, which is almost at new highs again right now. So all those things are in play about what exactly is going to happen, what's going to change. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly. You brought up a great point. He says so much. He's on Twitter. I actually said he puts out more mixed signals than a quarterback with Tourette's. he says one thing and then another thing. He's just nuts. And I think that's just all just confusing people. We'll see what he does, even if he gets in, because of course they're still talking about possibly not even putting him in. And I think it's December 19th. They're going to have the Electoral College, which is another BS, your vote counts sort of thing. Where already a lot of the Republican guys have said they're not going to put him in. So we'll see what happens. But you brought up the biggest point of it all, and that's the only thing that anyone should be talking about is the U.S. national debt. Now it's $20 trillion. When Barack Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who hasn't had one day of peace since he's been in office, came into office, it was about $9 trillion. $10 trillion. It's now $19.8 trillion. It's almost doubled in the last 8 years. That's a complete banana republic, a completely bankrupt country. Of course, the Federal Reserve is just printing money. They've been doing quantitative easing forever. They've been at 0% interest rates now for 8 years. Europe's now going into negative interest rates. That's the real issue, and there's really no answer for that. Either way, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting. I mean, I just came back from India where they had a currency reset. We spent time in Venezuela, Luckily, we didn't die in the murder capital of the world. But you've been, having your fingertips on a lot of this economic news that a lot of people don't know, and you also share it through your newsletter. And we actually have a discount for We Are Change listeners. You get 10% off with the promo code We Are Change. All the information will be in the description below. But we also have Anarchapulco, where hundreds of people all over the world come down here to this beautiful, amazing place for an awesome conference that Jeff put together called Anarchapulco. And to check that out, the link will be in the description below. I'm also doing a Change Media University boot camp, some life coaching. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to be definitely worthwhile to have 100% student success with the people who participate in that. And also, the information for that will be in the description below. Jeff, what else do you have going on? Because I know you got the newsletter, you got Anarchapulco. What's the latest for you?
That's Dollar Vigilante's been keeping me so unbelievably busy. I was supposed to go with you to Europe in November, and I just canceled with the whole election thing. There was so much stuff going on. So that's really it. The Dollar Vigilante just nonstop. When I first started in 2010, I was like, what am I going to write about every day? And now it's like decide between 10 or 20 things to write about every day. It's that we're nearing the end of this system. It's absolutely very, very close now. What you saw in India is going on all over the place called the war on cash. They want to actually get rid of cash. They want to get everyone into the banking system, and then they're going to just shut down the banking system and reset all of the debt. That's something called the debt jubilee, which I think they'll be doing fairly soon, which is going to actually make it so most people will lose everything. So people really need to be paying attention right now. So that's why check out the Dollar Vigilante. As you said, you've got a discount code for that, 10% off. 10% off for Anarchapulco. And Anarchapulco, as you know, Luke, we've come for every year since we started having it. Amazing event with some of the best anarcho-capitalists around the world, all creating systems to get rid of these governments and central banks, all without a shot fired, all just by changing the system and making the old system obsolete.
Anarchapulco is seriously one of the best conferences that I have ever been to before, mainly because it's in Mexico and people are a lot freer and happier here, and plus the weather is great and the people and just the environment of total freedom is awesome and incredible and beautiful. Jeff, me and Jeff have been all over the world. We've partied a lot all over the world, but I haven't seen anyone work as hard. Literally, he is up at the crack of dawn in front of his computer. He won't leave the computer because he's researching and studying. He's a good friend of mine. Check him out. And thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe. We're going to have a lot more information coming here your way all around the world at We Are Change.
WeAreChange.org. We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe on YouTube. Now, one thing that I'm looking at, he kind of mentioned it a little bit. One thing that I'm seeing is there is a bubble right now. Trump is going to inherit this bubble, whether he likes it or not. It's just something that we can't ignore, but we also we understand that they're going to blame it on him. That's just politics of it. But will we be able to have the right people in place to be able to get through it? And I kind of worry about that. You have a labor secretary, but there's so many other departments that I think that we're missing something that's going to affect the country. And it really has nothing to do with how good Trump is. It has to do with who is running these departments. And are they going to put the right policies in place? And a lot of it's not putting policies in place, it's getting rid of a lot of the policies that are hurting the economy. And I really don't know. Okay. Now, I have one here from AMTV, and it's titled "Fake News Shutdown Proves Something Big is About to Happen." Now, apparently, there's some claims out there that there are, alternative media that's being shut down. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it's happening. But what I do know is that I think it was NPR. I believe it was NPR. Had interviewed the guy that started the websites that were to try to mirror like CBS and CBN, all those fake websites, and then he put fake articles on it. They interviewed that guy, and he goes, well, they basically came out and go, well, he tried to bait the left, and they just didn't bite. It was the right that was biting, and he was just doing it as a test or experiment, or they play it off because he's a liberal. Oh, but they are apparently starting to go after actually, I'm going to play this other one. This is the latest one. Hillary blames fake news after epic loss. And then he kind of talks about the previous clip here. So we'll get that queued up here.
Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm Christopher Green. You're watching AMTV, alternative media television, hard-hitting, and in your face. 2016. Hillary, are you freaking kidding me? Are you? We're going to watch your speech that you gave yesterday, dressed in your purple. We picked up on that, by the way. You're wearing purple quite a bit lately. Not really sure why, but it's an observation. You were giving a speech about Harry Reid retiring, the guy with the patch on his eye because the mafia did something to him. You guys all remember that? Hillary talks about fake news being a threat to our society. It's the difference between life or death, according to Hillary Clinton. We're going to watch this. This is pretty freaking amazing. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from a woman who lost, who got the shit kicked out of her. Just a couple of weeks ago with the election of Donald J. Trump. So, Hillary, you don't even have a platform to even speak. You're not our president. You're not real at all. You yourself are fake. You're a fake politician. But we are going to dissect what you said yesterday. Let me close the door here. Because you must be freaking kidding me, Hillary. You must be freaking kidding me. Got to find it here. See, Hillary, you're screwing us up already. You get our blood boiling so much, we can't even find your freaking video. You fake politician with your fake selfies hanging out in the woods. Like, I I'm Hillary Clinton. I'm a real person. Not really. Not really. And, you're just not over your loss. Again, you're fake, Hillary. You have no authority to say anything. You're fake news. Here at AMTV, we actually have a platform. It's not fake. We actually have an audience. You lost the election. So you're a has-been.
This is not exactly the speech at the Capitol I hoped to be giving after the election. But after a few weeks of taking selfies in the woods, I thought it would be a good idea to come out. And I am very grateful to Harry for inviting me to be part of this celebration.
And we're still waiting for Donald J. Trump, by the way, to press charges, to hire a special prosecutor and send you and your husband and pound me in the ass prison for the rest of your life for your crimes. If any of us committed half a tenth of what you've done, we'd all be in jail for life. Yet you're still giving speeches talking about fake news and attempting to shut down the truth. See, you're just pissed because you guys can't control the narrative anymore. The mainstream media can't brainwash the public like they used to. So you're a little bit upset about it. You're upset about your loss. You guys can search this along with me. Clinton decries, essentially blames fake news and first speech. There we go. Here's faux news, which, by the way, stole our registered trademark, hard hitting in your face. Thank you, Bill O'Reilly, very much. Well, let's watch a commercial here. You got to have a little fun doing this, guys. Come on. You got to smile occasionally, right? Right? This is fun. Talking shit on Hillary Clinton. This is amazing. See, this is real news. This is real. Pellegrino.
Harry has fought for the simple but powerful idea that, yes, we are all created equal. He understood that all our leaders and all of our citizens alike have a responsibility to defend the rights of every single American. After the Constitutional Convention, it's well known, Benjamin Franklin was asked what form of government the new nation would have. A republic, he replied, if you can keep it. Well, that's still our charge, and it's as urgent as it's ever been.
It's urgent.
We must stand up for our democracy, just as Harry has done his entire career. Let me just mention briefly one threat in particular that should concern all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, especially those who serve in our Congress. The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded.
The epidemic of fake news, false propaganda, really just truth news that killed my campaign and resulted in my epic freaking loss.
Flooded social media over the past year. It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences.
Yeah, like spreading so much truth that you get your ass kicked in 2016 and we elect Donald J. Trump. You see, the people have awoken. The sleeping giant in this country realizes you're full of shit, does not trust the mainstream media, and there's a reason 96% of the U.S. population thinks the Clinton News Network is full of shit.
This isn't about politics or partisanship.
She says it's not about politics or partisanship at all. That couldn't be further from the truth. And of course, it's about totalitarian control. You know, Hillary, you're looking much more like Kim Jong-un recently to me. A subscriber pointed this out. You know, so this is supposedly a free press, free society, right? Then why the attack on fake news, really truth news, real news, which makes up alternative media? Why the attack on it? I thought you just cited Benjamin Franklin. I mean, he believed in the free press.
Lives are at risk. Lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities. It's a danger that must be addressed and addressed quickly.
Oh, it's a danger. No, it's only a danger to you, Hillary, It's only a danger to you and the establishment and the multi-billion-dollar, too-big-to-fail mainstream corporate giants. That's where the danger is. It's enlightening for the American people. It's joyous for everybody else. It's freedom, truth, and light for the world. It's dangerous for you. Let's make that clear.
Addressed and addressed quickly. Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to foreign propaganda, and Silicon Valley is starting to grapple.
Oh, okay. You mean Silicon Valley that supported your campaign and lost? You mean people like Howard Schultz, Starbucks, Mr. Progressive, that's selling $10 cups of coffee to the bankrupt, debt-ridden student loan millennials? You mean that Silicon Valley? You mean Silicon Valley like Jeff Bezos of the Washington Post that accused alternative media television of being a fake news Russian propaganda-sponsored Kremlin asset of Vladimir Putin? You mean that fake news organization? You mean that establishment? That Silicon Valley that lost and now has to kiss the feet of our new president, Donald J. Trump? That Silicon Valley? You mean people like Mark Zuckerberg that build a wall in Kauai, even though he says he's against legal immigration policies here in the United States of America, but builds a multi-million-dollar wall on the island of Kauai in Hawaii because he doesn't want the little people to get into his freaking compound. So he steals the view from the native Hawaiians. That's Silicon Valley? Sergey Brin, Larry Page that are demonetizing videos and censoring the internet and the real news on YouTube? That's Silicon Valley? Just making this clear here so we can better understand, right?
With the challenge and threat of fake news. It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
Folks, she just can't get over her loss, can she? Now, I think the biggest thing to stress here is that Hillary Clinton is fake herself. She has no platform at all to talk. She lost. It'd be different if you were president of the United States, Hillary, but you're fake. You're not our president. You didn't win. You lost. So why should we take anything you say seriously? You know, this whole idea of fake news is just a McCarthyist era Red Scare witch hunt, engineered by Silicon Valley, these politicians, and the progressive radical left because they're pissed off they got their ass kicked and we actually elected Donald J. Trump. That's all it is. And it just goes to show you how brainwashed the American people are. I even had someone come up to me and say, Christopher, well, is it a good or a bad thing that the Washington Post pointed out that you are allegedly a fake news organization, even though their primary source is actually fake? Proper Not is a random, anonymous WordPress website with zero credibility at all. Zero. That's fake. And they asked me if it was good or bad. I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's validation. I mean, it's nice to be recognized. Thank you for the free publicity. Folks, all this is the establishment grasping at freaking straws because they're losing so incredibly badly. Right? They don't know what to do. I mean, their George Orwell totalitarian society, this whole idea of globalism and the New World Order has been grossly destabilized by you. And people will look at CNN, and just because they're like a multi-billion-dollar corporation and there's a freaking talking head there of Anderson Pooper or Wolfie Blitzer with a sexy beard, they're like, oh, that must be legitimate what they're saying off their teleprompter. But if it's a regular person investigating the truth for themselves and sharing that with the world, and it just happens to resonate with millions of eyeballs, they're like, oh, that must be fake. I've had people say, can you prove that your news isn't fake? Can CNN be fake? I've had people say, can you prove that your news isn't fake? Can CNN? Can Fox? Can MSNBC? No. It's just an opinion. It's a multi-billion-dollar opinion. I mean, if Anderson Pooper told people to jump off a cliff people would do it. They'd be like, oh, I guess it must be true. People are dumb. But they're actually waking up. I mean, again, these are not stats I'm pulling out of my butt. 96% of the population doesn't even trust the mainstream media anymore. It's one of the reasons Hillary Clinton lost. So they will stop at nothing, folks. They've lost control. They can no longer peacefully discredit what people like myself and others are doing. So now expect a full frontal war, a full frontal attack on everything true, on the alternative media, on independent journalism and journalists. Again, folks, I told you a long time ago, these people will stop at nothing. Hillary Clinton and the people that own her will stop at nothing to shut down this movement. They're running scared. Again, your freedom is an illusion here in this country, folks. It's no different than the former communist nation of China or Kim Jong-un's North Korea. Hillary Clinton is one and the same. Her and Kim Jong-un should run off together, hang out, develop nuclear warheads during their honeymoon or something. I mean, this is how crazy it is. They are burning books, burning truth in the United States of America. It is why they are passing bills through Congress right now to shut down the independent alternative voice. It's why there's pressure from Silicon Valley, whether or not it's Facebook, Google, parent company Alphabet that owns Uscrew, Twitter, and others that are shutting down and censoring the alternative voice and people like you. We do not have a free society in this country. And now they are running scared. Again, I pointed out yesterday that many of us have noticed, not just us, but mainstream pop culture icons and heavy hitter YouTubers like PewDiePie that made over a stunning $12 million or something like that last year, noticed a specific algorithmic change in November. Oh, ain't that convenient? In and around the election, because it's now filtering and censoring the truth online. There's a reason Barack Obama handed over the internet in October. I can. I'm Christopher Green. I'd like to hear your thoughts, comments, suggestions in the comment box below. Like this video, and don't forget to click that bell. Click that bell, because you've been unsubscribed from AMTV. I mentioned that yesterday. Make sure you click the bell, or you'll never get a video again. Hard hitting it in your face. Peace.
Okay.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green.
AMTV, Christopher Green. Now, the whole demonetizing has been happening for a while. And, you know, I've told people, I said, do you know why it's not stopping under Trump? You notice how certain things, you know, Carrier is going to keep some jobs here. Ford isn't going to move the one factory to Mexico. You know, all these things are happening, but the censorship is still happening. Why is that? Well, even though a lot of these, you know, it goes back to the same thing government has done for a long time. But even though a lot of, you know, these alternative sites may have helped, okay. What we're seeing is, you know, Trump had talked about, you know, all of these groups that are, you know, saying that, you know, we got to stop he basically said we have to go after fake news. So, you know, he said it too. And I believe that one thing we're going to see is the First Amendment gone after. I believe that that is going to be the first attack, alternative media. And that's why it's really important, you know, whether it be YouTube or just donating and or buying products through alternative media is really important, because we will, you know, lose our monetization. A lot of us have already started, you know, experiencing it in the alternative media. Some people have gone back and forth, where it's been, you know, back and forth, you know, demonetize, appeal, finally get it back, but lost all the money that recent, you know, had already acquired. Start bringing up more, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're demonetized again. You're like, what the hell? And that's why you know, people wonder why InfoWars, you know, you're not a supporter, you know, great, okay. But I've heard the, oh, InfoWars is always trying to sell stuff now. Well, they used to do money bombs where you just donated money. At least one, they're trying to sell things. But it's getting down to where we can't rely on what is making others money, because when you go against the grain and you're not doing what these companies want, oh, all of a sudden, you know, you know, violated one of our policies, even though they got people blatantly violating policies that they'll leave go. Okay. We have to hold on to our ability to have free speech. If you believe it's fake, great. You don't have to, you know, watch it, trust it. Properknot.com. We have properknot.com, which no one knows what the hell, you know, who owns this. You have, you know, you have some on here that, okay, yeah. But then you have things like Activist Post, which does pretty good, you know, stuff. AMTVmedia.com. Anti-war is considered fake news according to this. Rents.com. Prison Planet. PrepperWebsite.com. Paul Craig Roberts. RonPaulInstitute.org is fake news. Let me see what else. Collective Evolution. And again, you know, there's some stuff on here that I know they post a lot of fake stuff. The antimedia.org, which has a show here on UCY. And it's also getting to the point that it's going to separate people, because unless the listeners, unless the readers start to help alternative media out and, buy things through them, or, choose your media, but if you don't start helping them out, these lists right here that are continuing to grow are also being used to demonetize people. If you end up on this list, eventually you will be demonetized, and that's what's already happening. Natural News, Zero Hedge, LouRockwell.com. I mean, again, there's some on here that I believe to be fake news, but, again, I'm not trying to shut them up. I'm not trying to censor them. Luckily, I do not see UCY on here, but the anti-media is on here. I mean, the list, and it keeps growing. It's starting to become something that is getting more 1984 than I think anybody's ever had in this country. The people that are here, unless you were around during World War II, experienced some of the bad things. I think our generations don't understand what comes after they're allowed to do this. Some unknown person makes a list and they're actually going by it. And it says about us, Prop or Not is an independent team of concerned American citizens with a wide range of backgrounds and expertise, including professional experience in computer science, statistics, public policy, and national security affairs. We are currently volunteering time and skills to identify propaganda, particularly Russian propaganda, targeting a U.S. audience. We collect public record information connecting propaganda outlets to each other and their coordinators abroad, analyze what we find, act as a central repository and point of reference for related information, and organize efforts to oppose it. We formed Prop or Not as an effort to prevent propaganda from distorting U.S. political and policy decisions. We hope to strengthen our cultural immune system against hostile influence and improve public discourse generally. However, our media aim at this point is to empower the American voter and decrease the ability of Russia to influence the ensuing American election. So, when you start seeing like RonPaulInstitute.org, anti-media. Now, not every article that anti-media puts out I agree with. Not everything that AMTV puts out I agree with. I'm willing to show, point out their views and my opposing views. AMTV, Christopher Green, big Trump supporter, not big Trump supporter, but he has some information that I'd like to share. And, even though I think that we tend to come from the same place, we have different opinions, but it's okay. We all can share different opinions as long as we're not forcing them upon others. And that's the problem. Now we have this list, and now, they are trying to demonetize a lot of these people. So if you're on this list, be warned. And I would probably check back on this list multiple times to find out, whether you get demonetized. And there's a few of them that I've heard that have been demonetized. I believe AMTV was also demonetized. I can't be 100% sure. Glitches do happen, I know this. Well, they at least claim glitches happen. But I think we're going to find out very, very soon if this is really going to occur. I believe it will. But we also do have some people that have a very, very big voice, ringing the bell that, we don't know these people. And if they're able to label certain people fake news and really not truly list why they believe this. And, I've read some of this. It's a lot of fancy talking without real true backing behind it, and just saying, well, if someone's influenced by outside sources, then they're basically sold out. Or if they talk good about anything that happens in Russia, they're probably sold out. And that's a lot of the rationale behind it. Well, if they agree with this person's linked to this person, which is financed by this person, they probably donated some money. So, that's probably why he said that. And so they're Russian propagandists. Now, there's a lot on here that they haven't even tried to link to Russia propaganda. Basically, just want to say, well, this is fake news too. We know InfoWars has been something out of Texas. It's been, what has been described as a conspiracy theorist, patriotic American, extremist is what those are some of the terms that have been related to that. You got other stuff like the anti-media. These aren't Russia propaganda. They're calling them fake news. But that's the opinion. And we can say the same about mainstream media, which is not on this list. Take care.